Hey guys, Anthony DiClemente with HealthBlueprintCoaching.com, and in today's video, I'm going to cover 5 causes of chronic fatigue that you or your doctor may not be looking for. So it's widely known that the main causes of chronic fatigue deal with improper sleep, inadequate sleep, or low quality of sleep. Even if you're in bed long enough, but you're not getting the type and quality of sleep that you need, that can affect your energy levels. It can be poor nutrition, poor diet, so some of these nutrient deficiencies that we see with a lot of people and a lot of clients that come to us. Or we have a lot of people that are just eating foods that they think are healthy and they're not, and they're actually zapping their energy depending on what type of food sensitivities they're genetically predisposed to or dealing with because of gut dysfunction. And for example, a client came to me today and she asked how I felt about sprouted grain organic bread and almond butter for breakfast. And for her, that was a bad idea. It's not only going to cause weight gain, but it's also going to trigger these immunogenic and allergenic responses that we keep coming back to, because there are a lot of foods that work for some people, but not others. And if you're one of those people that's dealing with chronic fatigue and low energy and you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning, that may be you. And it's worth having the two of us dig into it, or at least working with someone that is an expert in this area if it's not me. So we have improper, inadequate, and low quality sleep being one of the main causes. We have poor nutrition being one of the main causes. And we have, what's the other one? Oh, chronic stress. Yeah, so if you're stressed all the time, those are the 3 areas that I always start with. But let's say you've already addressed all of those areas. We're working together, you're eating right, you know that you're putting nutrient dense, low allergy foods into your body. You're also dealing with your stress, you're meditating, you're working out, you're getting outside, spending some time in nature, experiencing that love and connection with other people, and you're getting good sleep. You know that you're rested, you're not just sleeping enough time, which is roughly 7 to 9 hours for just about everybody, but you're also getting good quality sleep during that time. So you've addressed all of those things already. Now what? You're still tired. So that's what we're going to go into in today's video, and apologize for it taking 2 minutes to get there, but I wanted to make sure that you were first addressing those 3 main causes, because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So going into more detail, here are 5 things that we also will want to explore to figure out why you're still tired. The first is chronic infections. Many of you that are familiar with my story know that I went through a battle with Lyme disease, and there are many of these chronic low-level infections that are zapping our energy. There's a book by Paul Ewald called Plague Time that talks about this, and he links many of these bacterial and viral connections to a whole host of chronic degenerative conditions of today that are making many of us sick and compromising our quality of life, but we may even be attributing to normal aging. And there are so many diseases today, like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, where we have some idea as to what may be contributing to it, but we don't know the cause. And some of these low-level chronic infections are maybe blamed and contributing to these factors. So that's something to keep in mind. The human herpes virus is a big one, Epstein-Barr. All of these can be problematic for individuals that have compromised immune response, and all of these things tie together, as you'll see. But low-level chronic infections is a big one. Now, the challenge with low-level chronic infections is that it's difficult to test for. There are many subspecies of these viruses and bacteria, and finding them, as many people know, Lyme disease was commonly, one of the challenges with Lyme disease is that the tests often produce a false negative. So people get Lyme disease, they get tested for Lyme disease, and the test comes back negative, then they move on and they start looking for other causes. When in reality, it may very well be Lyme disease that they're dealing with, but that false negative threw them off. So chronic infections is number 1. Number 2 is impaired methylation. So methylation is a process that occurs billions of times every second, and it's vital for detoxification. It's critical for energy production, the production of coenzyme Q10 and carnitine, both of which our cells use to produce adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And when there are about roughly 35 to 50% of the population have a genetic variant known as MTHFR, methyl tetrahydrofolate, for people that want to say that 10 times fast. But essentially, this genetic variant can prevent us from methylating properly. And more so, it makes certain forms of folate, which is the synthetic form, folic acid is the synthetic form of folate, and that's what's added to many of our foods that are enriched, and many of these processed modern foods of today, the stuff that comes in a box, a bag, a can, a jar. All of those foods can be toxic to people that have this genetic variant. So they're unable to convert folic acid, the synthetic form of folate, into the bioactive form that we need for methylation, which is folate. And you can find folate in plant foods and a lot of naturally occurring foods that you can get in nature. So for individuals that are dealing with methylation issues, I typically put them on a regimen of a number of different bioactive B vitamins at specific quantities and make sure that they have adequate B12, B6, and a number of these others, sometimes SAMe, which plays an important role in the liver detoxification pathway and making sure that you're not struggling with any joint pain. So knee and back issues are oftentimes helped when I put people on these methylating nutrients. So that's cause number 2. So to recap, number 1 is chronic infections. Number 2, methylation problems. Number 3, chronic inflammatory response syndrome or biotoxin illness. This is something that Dr. Richie Schumacher talks about a lot, but many people today have issues with low-level chronic inflammation. And one of the causes of this is biotoxin illness. So you may have heard of mold toxicity. There are a lot of older buildings that have been water damaged and are prone to mold. And when we are around these mold spores, they can put our bodies in a state of chronic inflammation. Now, it doesn't affect everyone the same. It's usually, with all of these things, it's usually a combination, an intersection, if you will, of genetic predisposition and an environmental trigger. So if someone has a genetic variation like HLA-DR, which makes it's a genetic variation that makes it so that your body does not properly recognize a biotoxin and therefore does not properly clear that biotoxin from your system. And if you're one of the people that has this HLA-DR genetic variation, and then you happen to be living in a building, an older water damaged building that is, sorry, I'm getting bit by flies in my calves. If you happen to be living in a water damaged building, then that intersection can cause chronic inflammatory response syndrome and biotoxin illness. So, and that's just one of the many areas that that these problems can manifest themselves, but it is quite common. Now, getting into chronic inflammatory response syndrome is beyond the scope of this video, but if you want more information, you can go to survivingmold.com and get some good information there from Dr. Richie Schumacher. And if you decide that you would like to work together one-on-one, I can show you how to test your home or apartment or condominium for these toxic molds and make sure that you're not exposing yourself to this on a daily basis, which is going to be it's going to be very, very difficult to overcome. So number 3, mitochondrial dysfunction. So mitochondria, as many of you probably remember from biology class, are little organelles that our cells use to produce energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And many people have genetic variants that cause mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning they do not produce energy efficiently or effectively, which in and of itself can lead to chronic fatigue. Now, this used to be something that we thought was rare, but we now realize that mitochondrial dysfunction exists on a continuum, and all the way along that continuum, the symptoms exist from very mild, you're just a little bit more tired and you don't jump out of bed in the morning, to severe. And severe cases of mitochondrial dysfunction have been implicated in cancers and many other chronic degenerative conditions, ranging from, as I mentioned, cancer, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and so on and so forth. So it's very important that we make sure we are addressing mitochondrial dysfunction. And there are a number of ways I do this through strategic nutraceuticals, but also occasionally for some individuals, after I've done an assessment and made sure this is the case, a ketogenic diet can be helpful, because individuals with mitochondrial dysfunction oftentimes have difficulty taking glycogen, glucose that comes from carbohydrates and sugars in our food, and then converting that into energy. So when that glycolytic pathway is compromised, when we switch to a ketogenic diet, which keeps carbohydrates very, very low, and therefore the body responds by producing ketone bodies. And what ketone bodies are is they're an alternate fuel source. And ketone bodies that are produced in a ketogenic diet, which is a very, very low carb diet, and I can teach you how to do this if it's something that we deem appropriate, but a ketogenic diet allows the body to utilize these ketone bodies for energy and bypass the mitochondrial glycolytic pathway. So that is one way of dealing with this, but we also want to make sure that we're getting your mitochondria the raw nutrients that they need to survive and to thrive and to produce ATP, and that we're also removing a lot of the toxins that can interfere with that pathway. And last but not least is gut dysfunction. So gut dysfunction is one of the main things that I see in a lot of my clients. It's typically found in conjunction with other issues like hormonal problems and fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. There's even some new research coming out that's shown a correlation between SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and fibromyalgia, and some of these chronic degenerative conditions of unknown origins. So one of the most important steps that I take with clients is healing the gut. Now, we can do this through herbal antimicrobials and natural botanicals, but there's also a faster course of action that utilizes some prescription drugs. So some prescription antibiotics that are non-absorbed and prescription antifungals that are non-absorbed. And it's kind of like hitting the reset button on your metabolism, if you will, because yes, it does wipe out the good and bad bacteria, but then we need to repopulate the gut, deal with intestinal permeability by sealing up the gut lining and getting the person back to baseline. So there are pros and cons of each approach. The pros of taking the herbal, antimicrobial, and natural botanical approach is that it's gentler on the body, but it takes longer, sometimes 12 to 18 months. And a lot of us don't want to wait that long, especially because when your gut is compromised, when your gut health is compromised and the gut microbiome needs to be healed, we have to eliminate a lot of foods, and it can be restrictive, and it's hard to be on a restrictive diet long term because that therefore compromises sustainability. So what a lot of clients do is I will recommend the specific tests that they need to go get. I'll help them find a functional medicine practitioner in their area. They'll get those tests, we'll get the results, and then I provide a lot of the scientific data and research so that they can provide that to their doctor and show, hey, I would like these medications. Here's how they've been used in clinical trials and proven to be effective, and we can get their gut back to baseline, clean that slate up, and they're usually good within 2 to 4 weeks. And then we just repopulate the gut, heal the gut lining, deal with some of those leaky gut symptoms, and make sure that we get the gut microbiome back to a healthy place so that their blood sugar metabolism is more effective, their energy is better, their immune response is improved, and all of those things. So those are the 5 little known causes of chronic fatigue that I look for in many of my one-on-one clients. So again, the main ones that you want to address first and foremost are nutrition, your sleep, and your chronic stress. If you've already addressed those and you're getting a good night's sleep, you're eating great, you're avoiding a lot of the toxins, and you're probably, if we haven't been working on this, there's a good chance that you're eating foods that you think are healthy, but they may be causing issues for you. So I encourage you to not assume that you're eating the right foods and avoiding some of these toxins, because most people aren't. And then lastly, dealing with chronic stress and making sure that you're not stressed throughout the day. If all those things have been taken care of, then the other 5 things that you want to look at, as we covered in today's video, are chronic infections, biotoxin illness, methylation problems, mitochondrial dysfunction, and gut issues. So hopefully you found today's video helpful. If you would like help with this stuff, you can go to healthblueprintcoaching.com, or you can send me a message to my direct line, which is 847-989-3743, and then I'll send you the application. We can set up a time to talk and see if you're a fit for the program and go over some ways that I can help you. I'm Anthony DiClemente with healthblueprintcoaching.com. I thank you for your time. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.